Morning, guys. Paul here. Welcome back to the Anfield View. Hope you're all keeping well. Hope you're enjoying the World Cup, and you've been able to catch some of the games if you're from Europe or England, or if you're over in the States and Canada and Mexico, you're really enjoying hosting the World Cups and cracking atmospheres. I'm not entirely sure about the drinks or hydration breaks, as they call it, which seems to be being used as sort of a tactical evaluation and slight adjustments after what 22 minutes, which I've got no issue with the drinks breaks and the hydration breaks, especially when I think one of the games was 36 degrees, which is just crazy. Like, sure, absolutely. But when you're in basically indoors and air conditioning, I can't. I get consistency, but the whole reason it's there is from a health perspective. It's not to give the players a break, and to do a tactical sort of debrief. And so, from my perspective, like, get it on outdoor games with extreme heat, but I don't understand it from games that are indoor. Makes no sense, especially when they've got air conditioning. Games that were where I think there's a couple of games where it wasn't that warm at all, and I don't think anybody can really understand the logic of a hydration break being in play in games when it isn't required. And ultimately, you have to remember that for the vast majority of football games throughout the year, hydration breaks don't exist. And so it's only really ever in extreme circumstances when they're ever brought in. So, yeah, slightly bizarre, on that situation. But let's crack on, guys. A weekend of football. As you can see, I did a day one with those initial games, and I'm going to really run through these. We're a Liverpool channel first and foremost, and so we'll obviously highlight the Liverpool players that have been in action, but I'll really go through the results that have come and gone since the last video for you guys to really sort of come up to speed in case you sort of maybe missed them. Canada 1-1 against Bosnia. A game where Canada really had a fair few chances and an opportunity they could have maybe won that game. Nothing to really write home about in terms of the overall sort of quality of the game. It sort of was what it was, one of those sort of group games that, look, as a host, I think Canada, look, Bosnia aren't what they used to be in terms of quality, but equally, it was it's one of those where Canada feel that they probably should have won the game. But equally, I don't think a draw against Bosnia, albeit a Bosnia team, is not what they used to be. It's a solid enough start, isn't it? Really, for both teams. I think ultimately we kick on to USA versus Paraguay. Wow, well, this was an eye opening for myself. I mean, I know USA in recent weeks their form has really picked up. Was it the last sort of 6-7 games? It's very hard to really make any judgment calls on friendly games, let's be honest, because they're not a real true barometer because of players being in and out and towards the end of the seasons and all these depending on the quality of opposition and where they're at within their sort of planning for a World Cup. So it's really hard to make judgment calls really based just on that sort of line of form. But hey, the early goal really did set this game up nicely. What an impressive first half by the USA on that game. 4-1 in the end to them. It's very hard with the USA to really understand exactly where they're at because, look, all eyes are I suppose, from a European perspective, usually obviously gravitate to Pulisic because of his career. Pulisic is a curious case. I remember him coming over to Chelsea and all the talent in the world. I think he was at Dortmund before that. I may be wrong. All the talent in the world. And as we are a Liverpool-centric first and foremost channel, I remember him being sort of a nemesis every time he kept playing against Liverpool for Chelsea during a couple of year period. He kept playing ridiculously well, and then he would go through bursts of 6 or 7 games where you really did see a world-class talent. I mean, a proper world-class talent. And then he would just either through injury or just lack of form and just couldn't sustain it. And it's a strange old career, Pulisic, really. In one hand, he's done really well to come across from the States and without doubt the most talented American player I've ever seen. I've watched obviously all the World Cups they've been involved in, and I can't think of a player that even comes close to his talent. But equally, I suppose you it's one of those with Pulisic where you feel, man, he could have been so much more, which sounds nuts when you think he got moved to Chelsea. It's like, yeah, but he could, you know, when he was at his peak, he was very, very, very good. I mean, you could quite easily see him scoring in a European Cup. When you see players like Kai Havertz, for example, just to use him as an example, he's a scorer of great goals, not a scorer of many goals. He doesn't score that many in terms of number, but he done half score on like key occasions for Germany, for Chelsea before that, and obviously and for Arsenal. So, like, do you expect him to score 20 a season? No, it's not who he is. But equally, does find a way to have a knack of scoring crucial goals. And with Pulisic, he sort of falls between the two, where he's got all the talent in the world. I mean, like Father Time's probably passed him by in terms of really reaching the levels that maybe he could have done. Which, like I say, it sounds a bit crazy when he got to the level that he did, but it was one that it just promised so much more really. But a very impressive performance by US against Paraguay. It'll be interesting to see how they follow this up with the next couple of group games. Amazing atmosphere, as you can imagine, with them being the host, but a little bit underwhelmed by Paraguay, I suppose. But I think first half America were full on at it, and I don't know whether that was that was the peak or a combination of that in Paraguay, or who knows. Time will reveal itself, but you can't argue that. What a cracking performance by them in that game. Qatar versus Switzerland. Wow, talk about Switzerland should have had this game absolutely home and hosed, and they were so blasé, so nonchalant, so relaxed. It was literally like they weren't 1-0 up. It could have been four. They literally were dominating the game. It was one way traffic. You couldn't see a world in which they didn't add three or four, and they just, as the game just aimlessly drifted, and it kept drifting. The Qatar keeper, what a performance by the Qatar keeper. Heck of a performance. Man of the match, really, would be the Qatar keeper in that game. But it's one of those where, yeah, the thing with Switzerland is that it's been a long time since the days of Shaqiri and a magician with that left foot, and they just don't have a clinical world class player anymore. You mean that? Yeah, you have Granit Xhaka in the midfield and stuff, but it's one of those where they get into so many positions, and you are left scratching your head in that game. But look, ultimately, they kept Qatar in the game. The goalkeeper kept Qatar in the game so long enough for them to snatch an equaliser towards the end. And like, did they deserve an equaliser? Look, the goalkeeper did. It's a little bit crazy when you look at the whole of the game, given how much Switzerland dominated it. But ultimately, if you just aimlessly, after the first 40, 50 minutes where Switzerland should have been 3 or 4-0 up, and it was almost like it's going to come, where he's going to get 2 or 3. And sometimes with that attitude, if you don't keep yourself sort of honest and at it throughout the entire game, then invariably you do fall yourself into a trap where it doesn't matter, we're winning, we're in complete control. You're never in complete control in football at 1-0. Doesn't matter who you're playing. It only takes one set piece, one moment, like a mistimed tackle for a penalty or a set piece. And, obviously, great header by the Qatar player to make it 1-1. We kick on to Brazil versus Morocco. Hey, what a performance by Morocco, first and foremost. I mean, I think without a doubt, Morocco come out the stars of the show on that. Hakimi, great, fantastic performance. So many standout performances by Morocco. You could name 3 or 4 players within that team. The danger is when you're looking from a Liverpool perspective is that judging people on World Cup form has a habit of not always coming good over it. And history does tell us that Liverpool have been burnt with our sort of purchases in the past based purely on World Cup form. So I'm a little bit hesitant, albeit like you can't argue Morocco are just amazing, but Brazil's centre midfield just can't cope. they got completely overrun in that first half, and they should have been, a couple of goals down. Strange old game. I mean, I will finish 1-1. I will say one thing, in this game is that Brazil were much better in the second half. Great goal by Vinicius Junior, by the way. Come down the left hand side, coming, put it away with absolute ease. Good performance by Vinicius Junior. I'm one of his biggest critics. Along with Neymar, for me, two of the most overhyped players ever. You would think they would had it achieved the talents of Ronaldinho and Ronaldo, but for the amount of hype they get. But yeah, it's definitely. Definitely room for improvement from Brazil. In Morocco's case, so very unlucky not to have won that game. Incredibly impressive performance for themselves. Brazil looked a lot more solid when they brought Fabinho. I know, crazy to say, isn't it? Fabinho left Liverpool to go to Saudi, and the wheels had fallen off. But I wouldn't say that the wheels will come back on again. But in this context of this game, him coming on in that centre midfield, Casemiro. The thing with Casemiro for Man United is that he's a scorer he scores quite a lot of great goals for them. I know he's left now, but he scored quite a lot of goals for them. But you wouldn't necessarily say he was controlling the game, and he obviously doesn't have the legs anymore as well. So it'll be interesting to see how Brazil line up in the future, because they were much more solid in that midfield with the substitutions that they made. So they obviously recognised they were being completely overrun in midfield, on that front. Brazil just are what Brazil are now. And I think somebody sent a text or an email into the studio that was covering the game and saying, are Brazil just a victim of hype now? And so then, in terms of they're not the team that they used to be, has the aura of Brazil gone? I don't think the aura of Brazil will ever go. I think that their history of Brazil is so ingrained in football. It's something. Even today, we talk about Pele. Even in when I was growing up, and Pele retired, everyone talks about Pele, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Rivaldo, Carlos, Cafu, Socrates. Obviously, we mentioned Pele at the very beginning. So many world-beaten players, Jorginho, so many world-beaten players that they've had for the history of time. So many. The expectation is, where are the world's sort of superstars for Brazil? And the reality is, they would do anything for a Kaká. And Kaká at his prime was very good as well. They haven't got anybody at the level. They got Thiago. Is it Brentford? Thiago, is it Brentford? Okay-ish. He's good in the Premier League, but he shouldn't. Is he up to that level? It's the same with Richarlison. Is he up to that level? The problem that you've got is that so many question marks over Brazil. Really, you wouldn't say any of them are necessarily superstars. Okay, but Vinny Jr. I would say Vinny Jr. has flashes of it. Throughout a season, I think he's had maybe 1.5 seasons consistently at Real Madrid where you thought, okay, but he's not. He makes Aaron Robben look ridiculously consistent, and Aaron Robben was an absolute genius. But I know that's obviously comparing against a Dutch player, but Vinny Jr. has all the talent, but he's not consistently there from a mindset and from an execution perspective. So could Vinny Jr. score 8 and win them a World Cup? I'm not convinced. I'm convinced you're going to see you could see flashes of his talent like you did on. I thought he played pretty well. For me, that was one of the better performances I've seen from him in a long time. The irony of ironies is that they've still. The weird part about Brazil, for a long time when they had all this world-beating talent, they didn't necessarily have a great keeper for years until Alisson and Ederson. So the two best keepers probably in their history have been Alisson and Ederson in the last 10, 15 years. So they didn't have a great keeper. They had Tafarel and then whoever for a long time. Didn't really have great centre-backs, really. They had Lucio for a period. Obviously had phenomenal, Cafu, ridiculous. But one of the best right-backs, if not the best right-back ever in terms of attacking and defending. Obviously, Carlos was more from the attacking perspective. In the midfield, you had just people like Donga that were just fundamentally there, and Fernandinho, people that were just fundamentally there, and Gales. Gilberto Silva used to play for Arsenal. I don't know if you guys remember. People that were there really just to sort of have a solid foundation, protect the back four, whilst basically all the geniuses up top work their magic. The thing with that with Brazil now is that they have two great centre backs, great goalkeeper, midfield is okay. It's not great really at the moment, and the attack just isn't what it used to be. It doesn't strike the fear of God into anybody anymore. Sure, you like say whenever you got talent like Vinny Jr. still in the team, you've always got an opportunity. But do you honestly feel with any real consistency you expect them to really win a World Cup? No, there was far better Brazil teams that couldn't win a World Cup, and I would just you came away from that game thinking Morocco are miles better than Brazil. That's my honest appraisal really of that game. On to Haiti versus Scotland. Look, ultimately Scotland got the win, and there's so much pressure on them because obviously back qualified for a World Cup again. They don't make every single World Cup. They haven't come out of the group stages before, so just an opportunity for them to get out the group stages would be a roaring success for them. They didn't have Billy Gilmore in this game. He's not the World Cup. He's injured. I thought McTominay played okay-ish. John McGinn very fortunate with a goal. Took a massive deflection. They had chances there. You can't really argue. I thought Haiti played pretty well. I've got to be honest. I think it was one game. I think everybody was expecting Scotland to maybe win a little bit easier. I thought Haiti played pretty damn well on that one. I think the standout performance for me in that game is Ben Doak, or Ben Gary Doak, as he's now called. An ex-Liverpool winger. I think what you saw with Ben Doak is fundamentally what we all knew is that he's great for a trick to hit the byline to cross. And if you've got a target man, here's a dream. Liverpool don't play that way. And so look, all the talent. Ben Doak it's one of those. Well, I think is he at Middlesbrough now? I may be wrong. Apologies if I am. It's one of those situations with Ben Doak that it's not a lack of talent. It's just he just doesn't suit the way Liverpool play. Liverpool don't play with a target man. Here's a dream. Here's an old school winger, as in a couple of step overs, boom, hit the byline, cross it over, bullet headed goal. And Liverpool just don't play with that style. But equally, he could well and truly establish himself at many a top Premier League team in maybe mid-table, even maybe an Aston Villa. Who knows? But I think that heck of a performance. But man, the match for me, Ben Doak, really impressed. Great to see the young kid really sort of playing amazingly well on that one. Australia beat Turkey. It's one of those that Australia don't have the superstars that they had of yesteryear, the likes of Tim Cahill and Harry Kewell. They don't have the sort of stardust power that I suppose they drew us to them in the past. In Turkey, they got the Turkish Messi, haven't they? His name, sorry, probably really eludes me on that one. The one that was a real star in the last World Cup. I think he played quite a bit for Real Madrid this year. Yeah, am I surprised? Not necessarily. I think Australia usually put up a good fist fit, really put up a good show when they make the World Cups. They're quite a solid team. You've got a little bit of creativity about them. In Turkey, this isn't the golden generation. Whilst they have, that superstar player that I completely the name eludes me. So sincere apologies on that one. Just absolutely crazy by me. But too many late nights watching the games. I think that's what it is. Maybe a little bit surprised with Turkey and that. I suppose over the years I got so used to Turkey putting in some cracking performances. They put one against Brazil. They were unlucky to lose once. And completely outplayed Brazil in one of the World Cups. But we roll on to Germany versus Curacao. Look, we all had this earmarked as an absolute roasting, and this was right up there with the roast of Tom Brady, wasn't it? Let's be honest. 7-1 could have been about 15-1. Germany just put them to the sword. Musiala, great performance. Wertz played as you'd expect him to play. Wertz playing as he does for Germany, which is basically 9 out of 10 most weeks. Finishing still a little bit iffy. God knows how many shots he had, about six, 7 shots, and didn't get a goal. I don't think. And that's sort of 7 of them. So what you expect from Germany, letting a goal, defense doesn't look that great. It hasn't looked that great for ages. Midfield. The thing with Germany is that they play very much like Bayern Munich for me in respect of phenomenal amount of talent, and they haven't even got Leonard Carter, who went out injured just before the World Cup, which is a shame for obviously for him. But they just got a ridiculous amount of attacking talent. Not so much in terms of the strike. We're having a great conversation the other day in terms of, when was the last sort of German wonder striker? In terms of, I wouldn't even say closer was that, but he's ridiculously effective and efficient. For Germany, like crazy efficient. Just ridiculous. But you're looking at like Bierhoff and Closer. It feels like a long time since they've had like a world, like your Klinsmans and your Rudy Vollers of the world, and that sort of player. Yeah, maybe that will be what hinders them. And they've got two geniuses in Musiala and Wirtz. They got a lot of other talent as well on that pitch. I do think they're underbelly of the defence and not necessarily the most defensive of midfields. And you can make an argument that they could be got at by a much better team. So look, I think Germany, we all knew it coming into this. We've known it for ages with Germany. We've got all the talent in the world in terms of creativity. Don't necessarily have a proficient world superstar actual striker. They have a lot of sort of number 10-ish players. Look, could they win a World Cup with just Musiala and Wirtz? And maybe a little bit from a workman-like striker? Maybe. Time will tell on that. But I don't. My jury on Germany is out more on their defence and the ability to really keep games tight and let those magicians work their magic. And I just feel that it's a lot to put on Wertz and Musiala to constantly be the ones, that score the goals on that front. So I just feel that both ends of the pitch not good enough defensively, and equally, I'm not sure they got enough up top in terms of a world superstar striker to really win those pivotal games to take them to a World Cup win. And look, the benchmark for Germany is winning the World Cup. It always will be. I remember Jurgen Klinsmann saying, look, the whole idea, and the philosophy within the country is, frankly, to win the World Cup. That's why we're there. And that will always be the case. And as not as a fan, but, as a fan of football, it's what we've only ever known to be the case, frankly. And so, whilst in many ways you could sit and say, if Germany got to the semi-finals, it'd be a great performance based on sort of recent history. But equally, Germany's Germany. And they do have a lot of world superstar talent still in that team. Just also have quite a lot of flaws as well. Holland versus Japan. That's great. Back to some more Liverpool players, isn't it? So, just quick praise. I thought Wertz played exactly how I expect him to play. He's never stopped playing brilliantly for Germany. And so whilst he's had a pretty dodgy spell, we had a little bit of maybe a month period for Liverpool where he played pretty well. The rest of it never was. The rest of it was close to a C minus. Compared to his talent and standing, I believe he has. I would say he was a C minus for Liverpool last year. You could maybe say D plus, really. But that's compared to, for me, he's a superstar of the world. And he also has the potential to be one of the great stars of the next 10 years. And so there's a reason we spent that sort of money. Played a solid enough game. But equally, my view of Wertz is I expected him to be great at this World Cup. It shouldn't come as a shock to anybody. If you've been watching his form for Germany, every time he would play for Germany, who's playing well, would come back and not play great for Liverpool. But equally, the whole team didn't play great outside of Szoboszlai. And so, there's your answer, isn't it, on that one? For a lot of reasons, tactics. We couldn't adjust to his style of play. He couldn't adjust to the league and its physicality. We couldn't get the best out of him. And we'll come around to Isak in a minute and then do a full circle on the Liverpool players, really. So the next game up was Holland 2 versus Japan. Whoa, equaliser right at the death, didn't they, for Japan? Yeah, I mean, great header by Virgil. First of all, great header by Virgil. Gakpo played pretty well. Gakpo doing what Gakpo does. His annual 4 or 5 attacks in the same style. Get the ball on the left, cut it off on the cut in as per normal because heaven forbid Gakpo ever drives to the byline. Not what Gakpo does. So he basically just, I mean, the crazy part about Gakpo is the whole world knows exactly what he's going to do every single time he gets the ball. I'm going to get the ball, I'm going to drive in, and I want to try and curl it into the bottom, into the bottom or the top corner. And the problem is, it's so easy to defend because you know where he's going to go, and frankly, you know what he's going to do, which is basically try and hit the shot in a certain position all the time. But yeah, he played, just did what he did. On his day when things come off for Gakpo, look, Gakpo can score goals, and he can do that. But equally, the gripe with Gakpo is the fact that it probably doesn't work as hard as he needs to. So he's not great from a team effort. Not in terms of trying. He just doesn't look like he's putting in that much of a shift, or has the engine to put in the shift. Doesn't really create that much. Look, he can score goals. He can. He's a pretty good finisher, believe it or not. But equally, when it's so obvious what you're always going to do with your shot every single time, it's a bit like when you watch somebody take a penalty. You know exactly where by their body shape where you're going to put it half the time, and they usually do. And Gakpo is just everybody knows where he's going to put it. Everybody knows what he's going to do, and so it's not a surprise that the whole sort of wide world is wised up how to defend against him. But I think he had a solid enough game. I think Gravenberch played well. Best performance I've seen Gravenberch put in a while. So a gentle reminder, albeit he was playing Japan, but Japan came in with a lot of hype for this World Cup. But yeah, I thought Gravenberch played pretty well and assist in that game. I thought, yeah. So all in all, Gakpo, Virgil, Frimpong, I don't believe came on. Gakpo, Virgil, and Gravenberch. Yeah, solid enough performances. I mean, look, but the irony of Virgil scores one goal was a little bit at fault for the other because he missed a header. Sort of sums up Virgil's season, really, isn't it? On one hand, he was scoring crucial goals for us, on the other hand, making an error. Maybe that's just where he's at in terms of the age in his career now. It's sort of you get the good and the bad at the same time. So all was it a fair enough? Yeah, probably a fair enough result on the game. I think, to be honest, I don't think Holland created an insane amount of chances. Holland sort of are where they are. We were looking at where they've been finishing in World Cups over the last sort of 20, 30 years. Holland have had really good group stages and have been unfortunate to lose out on penalties or to Brazil or Argentina or it's one with Holland that it just isn't a team that has they don't have a Van Persie anymore, they don't have a Bergkamp anymore, they don't have a Kleiber anymore, they don't have a Robin anymore. And they're at the stage now when you look at them, is that in all due respect, Gakpo would never get in ahead of some of those superstar talents. I mean, I'm not even going as far back as Gullit, Rijkaard, Van Bastens of the world on that front. They are sort of where they're at. Ultimately, Delit's, I think Delit's injured. Virgil is coming towards this, the end. This will definitely be his last World Cup. People like Simmons should be, in potential world, should be playing for them in a star, but he's not. Memphis Depay, sort of, he's a strange one, Memphis Depay, that ultimately he has amazing moves and at times has been very talented, but at times has been awful throughout his career. They're just, you can't predict with any real assurance as to really what you expect Holland to really do at this World Cup. Ultimately, they still have some talent, but they don't have any major stars, in terms of like Gakpo's cool, and obviously plays for us, and we're very hard on him because he had an awful season. Look, we view Gakpo as a great squad rotation player. Ultimately, he wasn't meant to replace Diaz. He's meant to come on and just play the odd game here and there. He's not meant to be Diaz's replacement. And you just played every single week because we never brought Diaz's replacement. Next game up, we got Ivory Coast versus Ecuador. Wow, Ecuador going to first half. Ecuador. I mean, like There were one of the ones that hit the bar, the second one that hit the bar. Look, he should have been burying that into the corner, and they were like, oh, "It's unlucky." Not really. Great, great 1-2, great through ball, great movement. Just has to pass it into the corner. He just got underneath it and hit the bar. At this level, you've got to score it. You just got to score it. Look, Ecuador really should have been 2-0 up in that first half. They really should have been. Yeah, and Diomande had a really sort of vibrant opening sort of 15 minutes for Ivory Coast. Then nobody seemed to want to pass to him for his team for about 30 minutes, albeit I would say Ecuador had, the control of the game. We're on that with Casado, obviously, putting the strings in, for Ecuador. And it's one that Ivory Coast went on to nick right at the end of the game. It was a game that in the second half was much more even. You could make the argument that maybe Ivory Coast edged the second half, and Ecuador really deserved to be 2-0 up in the first half, but they just didn't get the goals, and really they weren't clinical enough. That's one thing. I mean, and I know for Ecuador's qualifying, it's been a problem. Too many draws, too many, not scored enough goals, too many 0-0s. And whilst they qualified really, really well, equally they also had that sort of weakness to them. And a game they should have probably been 2-0 up and probably would have seen them win. Kept Ivory Coast in the game. Ivory Coast really grew as the game went on. Diomande played pretty well. Not phenomenal, but yeah, pretty well. You wouldn't be rushing out to spend 100 million based on that performance, but equally you can see the talent that's there as well. Then on to Sweden versus Tunisia. You knew what was going to happen. You knew this World Cup there's a narrative that was going to happen. All the Liverpool players that have basically been asleep for the year were all going to basically turn up and put in great performances for the World Cup. Look, bottom line is let's put our Liverpool hat on now and just acknowledge the fact. First of all, Isak's problem this year wasn't his ability. Isak's problem this year was his fitness. He came to Liverpool unfit because he engineered a move. We knew he was unfit and it was going to take 2 months to get him fit. That's point one. Point two, the team was a debacle while he was out. Nothing was going right. We didn't get a system right. We didn't get anything right. The manager couldn't get a system. Even when all the players were fit, the vast majority of them bar himself, we couldn't get any of the system right, any of the structure right, anything right. Mindset, fitness, you name it. Mindset, fitness, structure, tactics, you name it, we couldn't get any of it right. And so we couldn't get Wertz to play well last year because he couldn't adapt to the league quick enough, and the style of play was dreadful. We couldn't work out where best to play Wertz. Is he a central midfielder? No, never was. Is he a left winger? No, never was. You know what I mean? It was almost like Arne Slot brought him in to be something that he's just not. He's not a central midfielder. He never was, never will be on that front. And he's not a left winger as well. Ultimately, he has to, for Liverpool, he has to be really a number 10 in the Premier League. He's a luxury player, a fantastic luxury player, Wertz. And I obviously digress, but in terms of Isak, great finish. Keeper should have saved it, let's be honest. But, great run, great finish. Scored a great goal in a friendly the other day as well. Isak doing what Isak does. At no point has anybody doubted Isak in terms of his ability. But for the games that he's actually played even half fit for Liverpool, half the time he's scored when he has been half fit. And then when he hasn't had a run. Let's be honest, he hasn't had a run where he's been fully fit for more than a couple of games, pretty much. And when he has had a chance to be fully fit or even half fit, he's scored goals and scored good goals. And so, no shock to me that he did that. I mean, obviously, you've got Gorkres there as well. Yeah, I think I expected Sweden to win a pretty open game. 5-1, didn't necessarily expect a 5-1. I know one goal was scored right at the end, to sort of make that a bigger cushion, but yeah, pretty impressively. And you can't deny they got two great strikers up top for Sweden. Great position for them to be in this World Cup. It definitely seems like a real dearth of anybody having world-class strikers, even in some of the best teams. And so, yeah, that's pretty much a roundup for all the games that have happened over the weekend, guys. Hope you enjoyed them. I think from a Liverpool standpoint, look, it's great to see Isak back and fit. Let's just hope. I think this period of the World Cup, don't want to curse us, but at the end of the day, look, he has to. We have to find a solution to his fitness. I know the broken legs like completely different. We have to find a solution. Newcastle did. If we can find a solution to keeping Isak fit, then ultimately he will be a big part of trying to find the solution to really sort of improve upon last year. So we've got, that's what Iriola's going to work this sort of summer period out on strategies and structures of Isak and really analyze his fitness and how, if you could, try and speak to him about what he was doing at Newcastle to keep himself injury free and fully fit. So I think that would be the key thing on Isak. Wertz, just doing what he's doing for Germany. Doing Wertz things for Germany. No surprise, still a great player. Never stopped being a great player. Once again, Iriola's got to find the system that works for one, the league, one, the team to win games, two, to get better performances, three, to be more solid, and four, to somehow unlock the best of it of Wertz. And what that is, well, this is what Ariola's is being paid the mega money for. Whilst he's been given some great luxury toys, Wertz, you've got two different problems. You've got to try and work out how you get the Germany form of Wertz, in this Liverpool lineup that benefits him and the team so he can win games. And you've got to work out how you can keep Isak fit. And you've also got to work out a solution that we're going to have 3 games a week, and we know but Isak definitely can't do that. And so there's the questions on that. Virgil doing what Virgil did, scores one end, take the other end, just where he's at in his career at the moment. Look, Virgil just doing what he does. Look, you can't expect Virgil to be where he was at when he's 28. Best defender in the world. He's not the best defender in the world. He's still a great defender, but he's not the best defender in the world anymore. A few too many mistakes nowadays. But equally, he's still a great asset up there. Both ends of the pitch. Ultimately, do you get many A+ performances from Virgil now? No, because he doesn't really have the pace anymore. Makes a few too many sort of mistakes in the box as well, in terms of concentration. But equally, still more than capable of being in the top 10 defenders in the world still. And equally, still a very, very live threat at set pieces going the other way. And in the Holland team, they're not really full of phenomenal attacking talents. That's a great asset. Great to see Gravenberch show a bit of form. Look, he's on a 6-year contract with Liverpool. What the future and how we get the best out of Gravenberch when he's not the defensive midfield answer. And we do need a defensive midfielder. And we can't fall into this weird trap that Gravenberch is the answer. He's not the answer. I think when the league was going so crazy technical, you almost got away with not having a proper defensive midfielder. He's not really a defensive midfielder. He can read the game-ish and break up certain elements of play. And people are, oh, yeah, but he travels, but he doesn't. Yeah, okay, but he's not a destroyer. He's not the one who sniffs out danger. And with this defence that we have now, we don't necessarily need a silky, classy version of a defensive midfielder. We need a Mascherano version. I mean, the best comparison is Fabinho, Mascherano. Fabinho brought some goals, a little bit more silky, more reader of the game, better engine, and just more defensive now than Gravenberch. Just look, he's miles better than Gravenberch. Fabinho, like by a country mile, but equally, on loads of levels, just a level up. Mascherano, the ultimate destroyer, fantastic at sniffing out danger, great engine, tenacious, just everything you wanted to protect a defence. I think Liverpool needs more a Mascherano than have Szoboszlai do what Szoboszlai does, and then answers on a postcard as to the next person. Maybe if you've got a Mascherano, a Gravenberch, a Szoboszlai, maybe that person there just unlocks the keys to the kingdom for the other two to really kick on. We shall see what Ariola really does, on that front, guys. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it in terms of the World Cup sort of roundup. I hope you guys have been enjoying it. We're looking at the games for today. I believe we have Spain versus Cape Verde. Be interesting to see how Yamal plays in that game. So all eyes on Spain, one of the favourites for this tournament, along with France. It'll be pretty interesting to see how they play. They've got Belgium versus Egypt. So we've got Marmouche and we've got what will they play Mo Salah today? Be interesting to see on that front whether Salah starts, but definitely Marmouche you'd expect to be starting in that game. So Belgium versus Egypt, yeah, should be an interesting game that one. You still got Is it Doku? I believe Doku from City still plays for the national team. So and then you got Saudi Arabia versus Uruguay. I do believe, apologies if I'm wrong, I do believe Suarez is retired now. So are we going to see the return of Nunez, albeit he's on a free and been released from the club in Saudi Arabia? Who knows? Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Uruguay are currently at. Uruguay went for obviously they've had a spell when they've had Forlan into Suarez and a really competitive team for a very long time, and whether they're coming sort of the back end. It was always interesting in World Cups to see who the next stars are that are coming out of some of these countries, because you don't as much as I watch football around the world, equally you don't see everybody, and so it'll be interesting to see what the stars are coming out from Uruguay. Saudi Arabia, a competitive team. But yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by that one. I wouldn't be overly shocked if Saudi Arabia won this game, but that's just me just saying from a point of view where it feels like Uruguay are in that transition period, to really bring through the next sort of crop of talent. And maybe this could be a game where Saudi Arabia sort of sneak a win in it. Look, could come a cropper in this game, and Nunes could score a couple, and they end up beating Saudi Arabia handsomely. But it'd be interesting to see how that pans out on that game. And then you got Iran, New Zealand, and then we got France, Senegal tomorrow, and Norway. So tomorrow. So tomorrow we got the Kings. We've got Mbappe. We've got Erling Haaland. We've got the heavy hitters, the favourites for the World Cup. For me, still until they're beaten. The bottom line is, look, France had a great World Cup last time around and got beaten by Messi magic, and they still have the best squad without a doubt in the World Cup. They still have the best attack, still have the best midfield, still have the best defence, still have the most amount of depth on top of that as well. And so, look, just on names and the whole squad, France should win the World Cup. And then, let's be honest, they should have won the last World Cup just purely on that. But Argentina had their kryptonite, great keeper, great midfield. Argentina were one of those teams that ridiculously good defensively, a quality midfield full of world-class sort of stars in terms of Fernandez. And a lot, so much talent, and obviously they had Alexis McAllister, so it'll be interesting to see how I think McAllister will do well for Argentina. I think in a World Cup that will be slightly slower. He's 27. I see a world where Alexis McAllister will go on and play in Spain probably till he's 34 and play really, really well. I think in a slightly slower league, maybe less games, I think that's what he is where he's at in his career. I wouldn't be surprised if he shines in this World Cup. But really, yeah, so you got Iran, New Zealand tomorrow, France versus Senegal. Should be a really good game. Really looking forward to France versus Senegal. And it's great to see Holland and Norway make the World Cup. You always want to see one of the absolute world's best strikers. And by the time he finishes, whatever you think, Haaland's going to go down as one of the world's best strikers ever. His numbers are absolutely insane. You may not necessarily like him compared to an Mbappe, but equally, no two strikers are built the same. His finishing is phenomenal. His strike rate's ridiculous. He's scored ridiculous goals. He can score all kinds of goals. And sure, he may only have 4 touches in the game. Who cares if you score 2 goals from those 4 touches? And that's ultimately where he's at. And you can make an argument it's far more impressive to score 2 goals from 4 touches than it is to have 20 touches and score 2. Most players want to have a feel and for being involved in the game and get a bit of a rhythm and a tempo. And his ability to basically just sort of be there in games but not be there. Then the minute something happens, boom, goal. It's a heck of a skill to be able to do that. Whether you love him or hate him, you have to acknowledge that fact. And so, yeah, that's all eyes down, really, isn't it, for Spain tonight, guys? Really looking forward to it. Let's see how they kick off for this game. We're looking at Pedri, aren't we, in midfield to really have the control. You're looking at Yamal. I'll be intrigued. I'll be intrigued to see. I'll be intrigued to see, how Spain have really kicked on from winning the Euros because they still don't have. I mean, they have Inaki. Well, is it Inaki Williams? Um, they still don't really have. They don't have that David Villa. The golden generation of Spain when they went for that period of absolute domination. I mean, first and foremost, they had the most ridiculous team ever. You had Jordi Alba, you had great keepers, you had the best midfielders could go down. You could make an argument ever in Xavi and Iniesta. You had people like Pedro, but ultimately you have David Villa, phenomenal striker, for Valencia and for Barca. And then you had obviously Fernando Torres, phenomenal striker for Atletico, Liverpool, and Spain in that period. They don't have that person. They do have Yamal, but he's not this. I mean, can Yamal do a Messi? I suppose that's the best way you can put it. Can Yamal? I think winning the Euros, but winning the Euros is easy. It's easier to win the Euros than it is to win the World Cup. Can Spain do enough so Yamal can just do what Messi did, really, I suppose, at the last World Cup, where he just came to the fore when he needed to in key moments, and that was enough for them to get through and win the World Cup. If that's the case, if Spain can defend well and keep the midfield, they've got more than enough talent. You don't. At no point do I think Spain are more talented than France. Absolutely not. I generally don't. Sure, I love the Mal, but equally, France got wingers to the moon. They got attackers to the moon. They got ridiculous central midfielders, ridiculous defenders. There's from just pound for pound, France are way better than everybody else. Then it's Spain. Then it's Argentina for me. In terms of where I would really sort of rank the teams in this World Cup. I don't rank Brazil that high, frankly. They have some good players, but I think those three really, I could see a world where Argentina could do exactly what they did last time. Again, I think it's only ever happened once before in terms of retaining the World Cup. So is it likely to happen again? Well, look, Messi's not any younger than what he was 4 years ago, but hey, his performances in the MLS have been ridiculous. So maybe it's going to be hot. It's going to be slow. He's still got magic in those feet. Nobody has more magic in his feet than Messi. And so maybe a great defense, great performance by Martinez, great midfield with Fernandez. Slower pace suits Alexis McAllister. Get some goals from McAllister helping out. Messi got Martinez as well. Maybe. I mean, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because everyone looks at Spain and look at Pedri and they look at Yamal. You're like, there is an argument to say Argentina have got just as good a chance as Spain. I mean, it's just the fact that Messi is just the age that he's at. You think we can't keep going on forever. So he's doing pretty well so far on that front. I'll be interested to see when we watch Argentina later in the week, as to how they perform. Usually slow starters in the groups as well, Argentina, and then they sort of pick up and build into tournaments. And so that will be an intriguing sort of situation. So, yeah, really looking forward to today. Spain today, Belgium, Egypt. Chance to see Salah, obviously, for us guys. And obviously, you've got France tomorrow. So I hope you enjoy the games, guys. I'll come back with another World Cup. This has ended up being a weekend update. I know we had one game from sort of late on Friday, but this is really a weekend update. Rather than doing it like after every single game or a preview and a match reaction, it's like there's so many games going on. I literally might as well just do a 24-hour live stream. Tempting as it is, maybe that's one to be reserved for another day. Maybe as we're a Liverpool channel, I think a live stream for a marathon needs to be reserved purely for us, isn't it, really? Yeah, it'd be great to hear your thoughts, guys. Any thoughts on any of the games that have come and gone? Any games that you're looking forward to coming up? Any stars that are really shone for you guys? Anyone you'd like Liverpool to buy? I'm always a little bit nervous. El Hadji Diouf. Oh, There. Yeah. We turned down the chance to get a nail club on a permanent buy, and then we decided to go and buy El Hadji based on a World Cup performance. Yeah, that summed up Liverpool's business and transfer business all in one hit for a very long period of time. And people wonder why we didn't win the league for a while. Yeah. There was very logical reasons why we didn't. And there was just a snapshot of it right there. But great hear your thoughts, guys. You enjoy your week. Have a fantastic week. And I look forward to speaking to you more soon. You take care. Bye bye.